All right, let's get started. Woo. All right, good morning, everybody. It's a big crowd. Thanks everybody for coming. Welcome to the 8th IndieWeb Summit in Portland. Yeah, awesome. So glad to have so many faces here. So we're going to do a couple of housekeeping items before we really get things going. I want to give a little intro to what to expect today. The way today is going to work for the most part is going to have a few morning talks, morning keynotes to kick things off and set the stage. We're going to do a quick round of personal website intros and demos from people in the audience. So if you, we'll explain more about that later, but basically it'll be like a 1-minute introduce yourself and show your website. We'll go out for lunch today to the food carts nearby, come back and create the session schedule for the afternoon. That will be bar camp style sessions for the afternoon. We have 3 rooms here that we're gonna use for that. We have a code of conduct. This is linked from the schedule page. It's hopefully pretty straightforward. Be respectful is the main goal of this, and there's a few organizers and volunteers who have volunteered to be points of contact if there is a situation. So feel free to reach out to any of us if there's a problem. There's a list of people here if you want to contact electronically via various means. Some of who are in this room, some of who are remote. And then everybody who is here, who is on this list, please stand up really quick so we can just point you out. So remember these faces. Everybody's very friendly. So great. And thank you very much for volunteering to be points of contact for that. A couple of infrastructure things for the day. We have several people joining remotely. So we have an IRC and Slack channel that we use to communicate during sessions and about the event. The details on that are at indieweb.org/discuss, which is hopefully linked from our pages. But that tells you all the different channels on Freenode and Slack rooms, where to go to talk about different topics. The Slack and the IRC room are connected, so you can join from either, and it's the same conversation everywhere. There's this wiki, which is where we collaboratively document things in the community as well as the schedule for today. And there's also an Etherpad, which is like a live note-taking, collaborative note-taking app. So during sessions, we will have everybody take notes on what's being discussed in the sessions. We're big fans of documentation in this community, try to make sure that everything that we're doing today and the rest of the year gets documented and captured so we can build on it later. I also want to give a huge thanks to our list of fantastic sponsors who have contributed a bunch of various aspects of this event, and as well as a lot of community members who are contributing monthly on our Open Collective page. So big shout out to everybody who's sponsoring. There's a few people here from a couple of the sponsors. So if you would like to point yourselves out and identify yourselves, Jared, I know Jared in the back is from name.com. And Noah from GoDaddy in the back there. So yeah, thanks a bunch for making all this possible. Restrooms, if you haven't yet found them, they're back out by the front door. There's restrooms there. And then as far as the space, we have this room and the 2 breakout rooms, as well as obviously the lobbies where the food is. And also feel free to hang out in the courtyard if you need some fresh air. That's ours. Don't go past that. That's the rest of the building has their own stuff going on. Yeah, so I think that covers the logistics. Yeah, great. So before we get started with the rest of our guest keynotes, I want to give a little background on what is the IndieWeb and why are we all here. So I like to start out with, does the thought of using Facebook the rest of your life make you a little uncomfortable? I'm guessing most of the people here that is a true statement. But aside from that, there's a lot of services that come and go. There's these services that pop up and shut down, and we lose data that we created on them. But even before services shut down, there's a lot of times you end up with these platforms locking themselves down and preventing open access that either they used to have or just never giving it in the first place. Twitter has been going through a bunch of changes recently where they're like restricting access to their API or making it more difficult to interact with the platform. Instagram has essentially completely locked out all third-party apps now, and you can't really do anything anymore unless you make a special business deal with them or are like one of their ad partners or something like that. But the good news is there are a few ways to avoid these centralized platforms by using more friendly and distributed solutions. There's several different ways to become independent from these silos. There's sort of out-of-the-box, ready-to-go platforms. Mastodon, Diaspora do a good job of making it pretty easy to install these things on a server and run it, or just like join one that you can find. Micro.blog, who is also here giving a talk later, they are doing a fantastic job of building a social platform with a revenue model built in, so they probably will actually outlast a lot of the other free services that are, because they actually have a revenue model, as opposed to like app.net, which tried and completely, they shut down recently. You can also go the more DIY route of installing WordPress, installing Known, getting a shared hosting platform from a company, installing software. You can use a static site generator, which it's even easier to host, but maybe a little more involved in the tooling to get it running. If you want to completely control your online presence, you can do what myself and several others have done, which is build something from scratch. And obviously that's not for everybody, but it's pretty fun, and you get complete control over things that way. So like this is my website, and this is some check-ins that I now put on my website. The nice thing about all of these is that it doesn't matter which ones everybody is using individually, we can all still communicate with each other using our own websites. These are some of the replies I've made to other posts, and if you'll notice the URLs of the things I'm replying to, they're all different websites. One is a micro.blog post, one is on someone's personal website, one's actually from Twitter. And the way, and this is an example of a comment that I made on my website, and it's showing up as a comment on the original post. So you can see that even though we're running two different pieces of software, we can still work together. This is my post shared out to Twitter and Facebook because I don't want to completely isolate myself on my website. I still want to communicate with my friends who are on Twitter and Facebook. So this is an example of I made a post on my website and I pushed a copy to Facebook and I pushed a copy to Twitter, and now people can reply on both of those, and the replies get brought back onto my website so I can see the whole conversation here. The way that this works, where we can all talk to each other and use each other's platforms, is we build off of these small building blocks. There's several specs that are meant to be small incremental improvements to solve a particular problem. So you'll hear a lot of these being referred to over the next 2 days probably, but these are the ways that our completely different software running different languages, different frameworks, different methodologies, we can still talk to each other online. There's a few principles that we like to highlight going forward. Build for yourself, as in build something that you want to use yourself, because if you're not going to use it, then why would anybody else want to use it? UX and design are more important than protocols. The protocols are obviously important, but they should follow from the user experience and the design of the software we're trying to make. Modularity, so the idea of building blocks where you can swap out components and in a reusable way, where we're not trying to build giant monolithic stacks, that we're not trying to build a new Facebook where we replicate all of the same problems that Facebook has. We're trying to build modular pieces that can plug together. And also, that brings me to a plurality of projects. There is no one correct solution. The better long-term plan is to have many different solutions, experimenting, trying things out, working together. And there are a few more principles on the wiki page and some more details on these if you're interested in reading further. So that's all I have for the intro of what is the IndieWeb. So yeah, thanks for listening, and I will now introduce Tontek to give us a little update on the state of the IndieWeb.
Good morning, everyone. Everyone's had their morning coffee. Here we go. All right. So I can't believe we're doing this for the 8th time. So welcome again to the 8th annual IndieWeb Summit. How awesome is that? We are blessed with what we might call embarrassment of riches. There's so many things that amazing people, community, you all have built and shipped and shared in the last year. I'm only going to scratch the surface on a few of these things. So just keep that in mind. There's a lot more that you're going to hear from the coming keynotes, and especially from each other, which I want to just emphasize is sort of like, in my opinion, the most exciting part is just to see what are people doing with their own personal sites, what do they got working, whether it's like they just set up a domain name or they just set up IndieAuthor, or whatever they just got working. It's amazing, it's impressive. It's always a step forward towards taking control and owning what they have. And that's kind of the theme we had last year was own your content, own your identity, own everything. And this is our homepage, and that's really what we emphasize. This year, I'd really like to take that a step further. Like once you've taken control of what you own and you're in control of it rather than the silos, the social media networks, like all these sites that pop up and go down at the whim of VCs that fund them and then sell them. Express yourself. So this is something that's from the early web that when we all had our own small static websites, we used to all express ourselves in all kinds of creative ways. Well, great. You've owned your content. You've exported everything from Facebook because you don't want them to be selling it to the highest bidder to manipulate elections or such. And you're wanting to express yourself instead. So there's kind of 3 key areas there that to keep in mind. One is your homepage. You're going to see lots of examples, and there's lots more linked to from the wiki. Design your homepage however you like. You want to stream? Great. Put in a stream of updates like most people have. You don't want to stream? You want to make it a portfolio style? Great, do that. There's no wrong way to do it. That's the beauty of it because it's your homepage, and as part of this diverse community, we all support each other in expressing exactly how we want to express ourselves. If you are putting posts on there, which I think is a very common pattern, makes sense. People are so used to it from social media. It's a nice, friendly way to put things up there. Make sure that each of your posts has its own permalink. But how you design the look of those permalinks is completely up to you. And one thing we've seen in the past year a lot more of is a diversity of how these permalinks are shown up because of all the different post types that people are presenting. We've seen all kinds of different post types taking off in the last year, from reading posts, and there's a whole new website, IndieWeb Book Club, I think it's called. You might even get to see it, Indie Book Club. Okay, even shorter, even better. And there's all these different post types that people are posting. Every year we're seeing more new post types get proposed and taken off within small communities. Different people advocating different post types, that's okay. Just by sharing, coordinating, we're making it so they can all interoperate. And beyond expressing yourself, the other thing that a lot of us want to do is we want to be heard, right? And I really want to take the step this year of saying, okay, we have been doing this technique called posse for a long time, saying, great, one way to become independent is to own your stuff, put it on your own website, but then still syndicate it elsewhere to all the different social media silos where all your friends are still interacting with them, right? Great, well, we figured that out. We know how it works. In some cases, we found that it's not as effective anymore because of what? Because of algorithmic feeds. You might be posting to social media silos and none of your friends might be seeing your posts. In other cases, they're downright shutting down APIs. And so we are needing to go beyond posse. And at this point, I would say the next place to really be heard is make sure that your feed, wherever you're hosting it, your streams, is actually properly marked up with the most modern feed standards. HFeed in this case, if you're just using your HTML, there's others for updating your Atom, or if you're exporting a JSON feed, great, do that as well. However many feeds you want to put out there, it's up to you, right? Like your site, your work, your expression. And this is all really important this year because the big thing that's happening this year is IndieWeb readers. And I'm just going to show you this wiki page because I'm not going to steal the thunder of the amazing demos of the folks that are going to demo the actual readers working. There's amazing things going on there. I can't wait to see how they show them off. So be heard, express yourself, be heard. And if I could say, last year we talked about empowerment. This year I want to really say, with each one of these steps, make a better future. Like every single day, make a better tomorrow for yourself and for others as well. See if you can share the work that you come up with, inspire people that they can actually do a better job with their own sites than what any social media silo can do. So a few community updates. We had a whole bunch of Homebrew Website Club cities come online, and in particular this past year, we have a lot of meetings coming up. But I want to call out Austin, thanks to Manton over here who started it up. Homebrew Website Club meetups there. Virtual Homebrew Website Club EU has been going on like semi-regularly quite well, thanks to one of our folks that's online on video here, Martin. And the other one that started up is Frederick, Maryland. So we have a lot of regular cities and we have a lot of pop-ups. If you're in a city that doesn't have a Homebrew Website Club, great, find a friend. Check out the wiki page, Homebrew Website Club. It's got instructions for how to start one up, what the minimum tasks are, how to announce it, all that. Like all this stuff has been figured out by those that have started them before you. It's really easy to start one up in your own city. The next thing I want to point out is IndieWeb camps. Great, we've done a bunch this year. We're at IndieWeb Summit now. The next IndieWeb camps coming up are IndieWeb Camp Nuremberg, which is in October, and IndieWeb Camp Berlin, which we are just announcing today, is officially confirmed November 3rd and 4th in Berlin. So if you're wanting to visit Berlin or you know friends in Berlin, encourage them to check out the wiki page. You can find all these. Here, I'll just even do a little live type of URL and load it. Nice to have a fast network. It's all online. There's a registration link already there. You can add yourself to the guest book just like any other IndieWeb camp. All right, next up. And if you're not in one of those cities, in particular, if you're in, I want to say, Austin, Brighton, Cambridge, London, Los Angeles, or San Francisco, talk to one of us organizers because there are, hello, there are folks working on it. And New York, did I mention New York City? New York City as well. Okay, left that one off. But we are working on trying to make those happen. So if you're in one of those cities or want to travel to one of those cities, let us know. Awesome. And lastly, as Aaron referred to, the principles really define what it means to be part of this community in the IndieWeb and how it's distinct from a lot of other communities working on different things. And that's a good thing. And what we've done is we've been iterating these key principles to really reach out beyond just, say, coders to generations of folks that are journalists and writers and just anyone that wants to own their own identity and data. We want these principles to reach out to them as well. We know we've got some work to do here to keep doing that, but we've taken a good cut at this, and we've got 11 principles. Like any good set, it goes to 11. So check those out. Technologies. We did a great job last year with standardizing a bunch of IndieWeb technologies like MicroPub, like WebMention, into W3C recommendations. This year, we've got a few more. So WebSub, W3C recommendation. Congratulations to everyone that worked on it. This was a lot of hard work, especially Aaron. this is how you do real-time updates on the web, period. Like, this works. There's web sub hubs out there. There's open source software you can run yourself. There's software that consumes it. It's a part of the fabric of the web for doing real-time updates now. And it's actually pretty easy to set up on your site, whether you use a WordPress plugin or you use a few web API calls. It's not one of those things that you can easily set up like tomorrow, if that's a thing you want to do. In addition to the web sub recommendation, we had several W3C notes published. IndieAuth was published as a W3C note, the JF2 post-serialization format as well, and post-type discovery. So those are all on W3C's site. That all got finished because the Social Web Working Group wrapped up and finished its work at the beginning of this year. So we're all done with the Social Web Working Group. There's a Social Web Community Group that's iterating a little bit on these and other specifications. But for maintenance, because we want to keep all these specs alive and updated with errata, we're now doing that in the IndieWeb domains ourselves. For example, IndieAuth. The latest version of IndieAuth is at indieauth.spec.indieweb.org. Okay, and that's where you can get the live, fully up-to-date spec. Similarly, JF2 is up there. The micropub is on its own URL as well. And post-type discovery is up there, as well as web mention. And so these are live specs that are based on W3C standards that are being updated with implementer and community feedback. But new for this year, microsub is now a spec. What is microsub? Well, that would take me a lot more time than I have here to go over. But suffice to say, this is the layers of standards for servers and clients to read the real-time IndieWeb. And that is kind of an amazing step forward. Microsub has been developed in the last year. There's going to be more talk about that as part of the readers that have been done. Let's see, what's next? Vouch. Goodness sakes, it seems like every year the problems of harassment and moderation and blocking and all that become more and more important to the web, to the social web, to all this media that we're producing. So this is a spec that we need to keep iterating on, keep implementing, and making sure that the problems of like fighting harassment, all that works best on the IndieWeb as best as we can make it work. Right? I think we can do so much better job than any centralized solution using our own websites, using a diversity of different approaches. And this is one of the specs that's going to help us do it. More in community announcements and services. Bridgie, which has been long serving this community and doing a great job, thanks to Ryan and other folks who have worked on it. I just want to give, I think Ryan's here. So there he is. Give him a round of applause, you guys. This is a service and open source software that my website and plenty of other websites depend on. The wonderful thing I want to get up to date is that this year, Bridgie added GitHub support, which is freaking awesome. I'm so excited about this. And in fact, this was one of the most prescient moves I've seen on the web because he added it months before the acquisition. The timing was amazing, and a bunch of us have been trying it out and doing and basically owning all our GitHub issues and responses and comments. If you want to see how to quickly set that up, I would highly recommend checking out Chris Aldrich's post, Enabling Two-Way Communications with WordPress and GitHub. It talks about how you can update the various plugins that the IndieWeb community has developed and basically authenticate with Bridgie on GitHub, and it just works. He's done this amazing work here. It is literally the simplest, fastest way to get it up and running because we have all these standards to interoperate. One set of people built a service, another built a plugin, another built the instructions for how you do it and deploy it within what? A couple of minutes, hours at most?
Oh no, that was almost instantaneous. The second I heard him say he did it, it was done. It took longer to write that post than it did to implement it.
There you go, right? And that's kind of the power of this community, right? You don't have to do all the work yourself. Ship an awesome service, ship a plugin that uses a service, write amazing documentation about how to make it work. Each one of those individuals did those differently, asynchronously, and now we have something that people can set up and run trivially. So that's kind of amazing. But it's not all good news. Unfortunately, Facebook has iterated their API once again and is leaving us, as we say, the rest of the open web behind. So Bridgie is dropping Facebook support. And maybe that's okay. Backfeed is already dropped, and publishing support is being dropped by the end of July, I believe. August.
August 1st, so yes.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, and maybe like I've noticed myself that the posts that I've posted to Facebook just don't get that much uptake anyway. I'm guessing algorithmic feeds are to blame, not even showing my posts. So what's the point of posting if people don't see your posse copies, right? Why go to the extra effort? So just as a heads up, maybe that's something to talk about in the coming days. All right, the other two big updates I wanted to point out is getting started with WordPress has gotten a lot of great updates and more updates coming soon. If you have friends that use WordPress, point them here. If you have friends that are experts at WordPress and are like, just send me the plugins to add. The WordPress plugins page has had a major update, nice summary of like which plugins to install, what does it do for you, where can you install it from, you know, either the WordPress like formal repository, or if they want to hit the bleeding edge with the GitHub repo, they can do that as well. Who are the people that developed it? So names and faces to go with the projects. And this is one of the best things I think about this community is that we're really good about making that human connection. Like we don't just have like these blank home pages that are like super corporate slick with a nice video. We've got like actual real human beings behind every single effort. And that I think is not to be underestimated. All right, this is a big announcement for this year. One guy showed up from Drupal and built this amazing IndieWeb plugin that added support for like all these different specs, and there's already sites using them as well. So in the category of one person can make a difference, I think this definitely by Swentol, I forget his actual name. Anyone? What's that? Christoph, okay. Yeah, I have a really hard time associating what alias means what name, except I know GWG is David here in the front and center. We should all know that. All right, I talked a little bit about readers. There's more on the readers page there. And just to point out, Together was an idea that was essentially conceived last year at this summit and is live now as a web-based IndieWeb reader. It's amazing, and the people that worked on it are amazing. They're here. I hope they give a demo of their work. There's just been an amazing, just folks coming together, getting stuff working at, using it themselves day to day, every day, depending on it. And so that's an exciting innovation to check out, web-based IndieWeb reader. Built on the microsub efforts as well, separating the client and server needs. Aperture is a microsub server that Aaron has developed, and I think it's been in limited beta or private beta for a while, but I think we might see some announcements about that soon. And then mobile readers. This is perhaps one of the biggest challenges of anything web today, is make your stuff work on mobile, because that's where most people are spending most of their time. And the breakthroughs that have been coming through with indigenous, just making readers that look absolutely beautiful, simple UIs, right? Nice chronological timeline. Who knew that that would actually become a feature that you had to ask for? Clean and simple presentation, no ads, right? Because if you run the software yourself, there's no reason for you to put ads in it. Great stuff. And this is on iOS and I believe Android as well. So again, I'm just going to show you this couple of screenshots, and that's about it. And this lets me close my talk with what I think this year is going to be all about, which is the year of the IndieWeb reader. Ever since we lost Google Reader, and we've had many other small efforts at kind of recreating old RSS reader UIs, but not really getting it in terms of the modern social web, in terms of what people expect. They expect a mobile client. They expect a client that they can interact with, that they can quickly favorite or like or repost or retweet, whatever you want to call it, retoot. We got some Mastodon fans out there.
It's called Boost.
Boost? Okay, thank you.
Well, if you scroll, you'll see.
We got some interaction. Or yes, whatever you want to do with your read, you expect to be able to do it on mobile, be able to reply right there in your reader, write a comment, and the IndieWeb aspect of it is all those interactions, instead of going to a social media silo, get sent from the reader to your own website. So when you're done reading, you've got a whole record of the things that you've replied to, liked, or whatever on your own website. And I think that integration is really going to inspire people to switch to using readers that are in these walled gardens, to using IndieWeb readers, which are a huge like generational leap from the RSS readers of yesteryear, where the interactions don't just get saved in your silo, right? Like Google Reader had favorites, but where'd the favorites go? Nowhere. They stayed in Google Reader. With the modern IndieWeb readers, all your interactions go to your own website. So again, one more thing you own, one more thing you control, and you get to decide how you want to present those, if at all, on your website. So, and with that, I'd like to introduce our next set of keynote speakers. Here from Micro.blog is Gene and Manton.
That's not gonna be quite right. It might take a second to figure out how to.
Is that the guinea pig?
Yeah, I need to create one. I hadn't thought of that until now. It's hard to see their ears. They're very floppy. Okay.
It's all right. Sorry, 1 second. Do I turn off mirroring? Is that what I do?
Any guinea pig fans out there besides me?
Guinea pig photo fans.
Yes.
Who else should we be following? Yeah, I know, a guinea pig algorithm, certainly.
That's
Well, what we need is, that's what I'm building tomorrow, a channel full of guinea pig web reg. Yeah. Well, no, we have IndieWeb cat, we have guinea pig, we need the
Yeah,
whole, we
indeed.
need a place to aggregate all this.
there's
Post kind.
All right. Can everyone hear me all right? All right. Cool. All right. It's great to be here. It's so exciting to see this room full of people. I'm happy to talk briefly, and Gene is going to join me too. We're going to talk about 3 things kind of that we've learned and kind of taking away from Micro.blog over the last year. First is user experience, a little bit about content ownership and how we see it, and then Gene will talk about the community. And so what is Micro.blog? I think most people probably have heard of it here, but I really like the way Brent put this. I was thinking back to this quote. He said, it's not an alternative silo. Instead, it's what you build when you believe that the web is the great social network. And I really think that captures it. It's like, it's not just what the first version of Micro.blog is, but what we think it should be. And of course, the web is a social network. That's about identity as domain names. It's about web mentions, and so on. And so as I was building Micro.blog, I realized, that the IndieWeb and Micro.blog, of course, there's a bunch of overlap. I had been reading like Tantic's blog for years, going back to early South by Southwest days. And so I was aware of the IndieWeb, but when I started to work on Micro.blog, I didn't set out to build something IndieWeb friendly. I just set out to solve these problems, but it turned out that there was so much overlap between the IndieWeb and Micro.blog. It just made sense for these things to be compatible. So the IndieWeb, obviously, these are kind of the building blocks of the IndieWeb. Micro.blog, these are the same foundations. So when we set out to have posting, originally I had like a private, like custom posting API, but when I saw MicroPub, it just made sense to scrap what I had and use MicroPub. Of course, there's some differences, right? So we don't have microsub yet. We have a lot on feeds, RSS and JSON feed. We support other posting formats for compatibility with other clients like MetaWeblog. And the important part about feeds is just reaching more people and being more compatible with existing websites. And so that gets like to the generation 4 on the IndieWeb chart. And this is really the goal of Micro.blog. Mainstream users, right? Everybody. And it's really about building better user experiences. So when Brent said, you want to build what you think of the web as a whole, social network, he's really saying, let's set out to make the web better. Let's make the web as easy to use and as popular as Twitter. And that's how I see kind of the mainstream users that could use Micro.blog. And if you go back to when Twitter was really popular, 2009, it's still really popular, but like at the height of particularly like third-party clients and developers using Twitter. I love this, what John Gruber, who writes about Apple at Daring Fireball, said. He said it was a playground for UI design, these Twitter apps. He said Twitter is such a simple service overall, but you look at a few of these screenshots and you'll see very different UI designs, right? Not in terms of visual style, but in terms of layout and structure and flow. And back in those old days, I mean, I built a Twitter app. It was a third-party client called Tweet Library. It had a way to collect different tweets together. I created the tweet marker API for syncing timeline. It was just a really great time to build these apps, and everybody had a slightly different take on it. And even some of the things we take for granted from Twitter, like the word tweet, like these came from third-party developers. And so I think we need these kind of breakthroughs on the indie web as well. Not just cute gimmicky names like tweet and the bird icon, but like approachable software that eventually everyone will be able to use. So like mainstream apps that are like common, like this is the app that everybody uses, but also kind of niche focused apps that we can experiment with and move UI forward. So for Micro.blog, we have kind of a suite of apps. We have the main Micro.blog app. We have this app Sunlit for photos and an app Wavelength for podcasts. And if you haven't seen it, the main Micro.blog app, the idea was just really simple. You type something in, as simple as tweeting. This goes to your WordPress blog or wherever your blog's hosted. If Micro.blog's hosting it for you, right, it goes to that. Focus on photo blogging. Make it really as easy to use as possible, kind of Instagram-like with filters. And again, like these photos don't go to like a generic photos.micro.blog URL or CDN or something. They're on your own domain name. Like when you use it, they're at your own domain name, and that's where they live. With Sunlit, we're actually trying to go one step further. This is, if this plays, yeah, this is a new version of Sunlit we've been working on, and it's a dedicated app just for photos, and the new version is really gives you more of an Instagram-like experience in terms of the timeline and replying and just trying to make it as simple as possible. And again, like all these photos that you're seeing in here are just someone's blog, right? I wanted to show one third-party app that someone wrote for Micro.blog called Icro, just because I think it highlights where someone could take basically the same thing as the main Micro.blog app and have a different take on it, different way to do photos, and just different UI. So the second thing, content ownership. This is, if you go to the IndieWeb principles that Aaron talked about, like this is the first thing, right? Owning your own data is the first and I think the most important principle. And I was talking, a couple of us were talking last night about Mastodon, and it seems like an odd place to start to talk about content ownership and domain names, but I think I found actually that contrasting what we're trying to do with Micro.blog and a lot of what the IndieWeb is trying to do with other services and platforms like Mastodon, it helps kind of think about the priorities. And so, of course, with Mastodon, you're probably familiar with it, but you have a bunch of instances, and it's a federated system where you have a bunch of users or even just a handful of users on these instances, but that's not really what I want, right? I just want my own domain name. I just want me, not an instance with a bunch of people. And having your own domain name is, of course, a return to how the web used to be, where if your web host went out of business or something changed and you wanted to move, find a new host, point the domain name to the site, everything just works. I'm sure a bunch of y'all have done this just like I have over the years. So how do we get more users to care about this, right? With Micro.blog, there's a bunch of people that have joined because they're frustrated with Twitter. And the challenge is like highlighting how we can have an alternative to Twitter and how we can try to solve some of those problems, but also prioritize content ownership. So when they come in, they're also aware of having their own domain name. And one of the things that I think we need to focus on is just not getting people lost too much in the weeds with the technical stuff and the open source or FTPing somewhere, or just going a little too far for the people that are just starting, and to focus on the domain names. So content ownership, before anything else, needs to be about the URLs. And so we've tried to do that with Micro.blog. It's not about open source necessarily, but it's about the domain names and getting people to think about that. So the whole structure of Micro.blog is actually around this. Micro.blog is actually two things from a technical perspective. It's like two completely unrelated things. There's a blog hosting platform and there's a social network. And it confuses people, and we still need to work on this and how we communicate this. But it's really powerful because the hosting platform, it's actually built on Jekyll with a bunch of other stuff we've done, and it's actually completely independent of the timeline and the social network. It's all based on feeds, so it doesn't matter if you use WordPress or we host a blog for you. The separation is there so that if you have your own site and you're hosting it on micro.blog, your own domain name, you can move it, you can get your content out. And I hope that, as people join the community, they also discover, and we're seeing this happen, they discover how empowering it is to write at their own domain name and have their own site. Because the goal is getting more people to blog. And so, of course, you can bring your own blog to micro.blog, use it for free, or you can pay us $5 a month, we'll host it for you. And the nice thing about this is that the goal that we have of getting more people to blog and have their own domain name is perfectly aligned with the business model. Whereas the goal for ad-supported social networks is more eyeballs, and there's conflicts with that. We're just happy if people blog. Doesn't matter how often they use it, how many times they reload, or who they follow. If they're blogging more often, that's a success, and that's happy. So we're happy about that. So I love seeing people discover micro.blog and then also find out about the IndieWeb and realize this kind of side effect of having your own domain name and the value of that. And so with that, I'm going to talk about community, and I'm going to hand it over to Jean.
Thanks, Fenton, and thanks everybody for being here. It is very exciting to be here. This is my second year coming to IndieWeb Summit, and looking forward to meeting the people I haven't met yet and to chatting more with people I met last year. And so speaking of community, as you might know, last year Manton started micro.blog with a Kickstarter, had a very modest goal, which was immediately met, and he the money goal was met. The bigger goal was not modest at all, was building a platform that would encourage people to blog and also to interact in a safe and welcoming community. And so after the initial funding target was met, Manton, oops, I skipped a slide. Did I? Yeah, no, I didn't. Sorry. It's hard to use somebody else's slides. This was basically the call that while we have, we want to encourage blogging and we want people to own their own content, and of course they control their own content, we have a timeline where people interact and we have a responsibility, we feel, to making that a timeline experience where people feel, that they're safe and actually welcomed. And so Manton set this new funding target and said, if I hit this target, I'm going to hire a community manager. And I was really impressed because that was a stretch goal I had never seen. It was like, I'm going to do better for the community. I'm going to hire somebody else. And I want it to be this way from the start. And I was pretty excited about that. And I just, unsolicited, sent him an email and said, I might be interested in that job. and turns out I was. It's, sometimes you get something in your head, you read about it or you hear about it, and you just can't stop thinking about it. I first thought, that's a crazy idea. But I had been working in a nonprofit the last 4 years, essentially as a volunteer, building App Camp for Girls, which is awesome nonprofit organization helping to get more gender diversity into tech, but I'm not really a nonprofit professional. I'm like a marketing person who likes to work with software, and so I was anxious to get back to that. And so here I am, and the thing about a community is that it needs caretakers. So as we've seen at Twitter, neglect is not benign. Mike Montero, who some of you know and probably have followed on Twitter before, invoked this metaphor of the garden, that anybody who's tended a garden, not me actually, an actual garden, knows that for the good stuff to grow, you have to deal with the bad stuff. You can't let the weeds choke the vegetables. And I think we've seen a lot of weeds and fewer vegetables over those years from when we were really excited about something like Twitter to today. And so we do work hard at that. One of the things we do to cultivate community, we have on the built into Micro.blog's interface is what we call the Discover tab. And we had to play around in the beginning a bit to figure out exactly what would be helpful. But people wanted to find other people to follow. You know, it's a brand new network, and not everybody was coming over from Twitter. So what we finally hit on, Manton started this, and now we do this a couple times a day, actually, is we curate a feed that is just people from the community with interesting posts that would probably appeal to at least one other person in the community. And it has really worked out a lot better than I could have even expected, because I see this all the time now. If somebody has a question, I put their question into Discover, and somebody else just, you know, happens to find it and answers it. And those people get into a conversation, and then you have a whole little area of your garden growing just by surfacing, you know, people's posts, people's questions, even questions about Micro.blog. Like I've put it up there where people said, why should I even be here? You know, I don't know anybody here. And now they know a lot of people because, of course, the community jumped in. Invariably, somebody in the community answers. We also started a microcast featuring a different member of the community every week. And I do interviews. They're short, you know. We thought they would be really short, like 5 minutes, but I can't talk to somebody for only 5 minutes. So be prepared. If we start talking today or tomorrow, give me at least 5 minutes. They're more between 10 and 15 minutes now. But generally, I ask them like how they got to Micro.blog, what drew them to blogging, had they blogged before. Very many stories of, you know, a path littered with domain names that they don't use anymore, and blogs that they abandoned at various places. So there's a lot of that going on, and I think when people realize they're not the only ones, we're not trying to be like the most amazing professional bloggers, and if you aren't going to be that kind of person, you can't be part of the community. And I crowdsourced I crowdsource the guests. Like I ask people, you know, who they want to see on it. I don't want to interview my friends, and in fact, I pretty much avoid interviewing anybody I actually know. But I do make an effort to balance out, like, that we have a diverse range of backgrounds of the guests on the show. Because if it was just a cross-section, it would be a lot of white guys who work in technology. And nothing wrong with that, but once a week it would be nice to hear from maybe somebody else. So, and what the building of the community is not only from altruism. I mean, we certainly are motivated by, you know, wish to do something that helps the community, but we also, as people feel engaged, as they feel included, and they feel that it's safe for them to make recommendations or take, you know, some initiative on their own, they start building stuff for the platform. So this, for example, is a meetup page created by Jason Burke, one of our community members. And, you know, we had been talking about meetups in different places, and, you know, we've had them, but we've never had like a central location to figure out where they are. So that was pretty cool, and he just did that completely on his own. Our Slack channel, our Slack board, we have a bunch of different channels, like the WordPress channel and David Shansky answering questions. You know, this has helped us out immensely because, of course, in the beginning, there was just Manton answering questions. But now, as the community grows, there's just a lot of interaction, and honestly, some people know stuff that Manton doesn't know. And that helps us focus on other things and not only do customer support. Another user, Eli, created a wiki to collect all the interesting links that people, of articles people have written about Micro.blog and how to use it. So that was pretty cool. But we have a ways to go. This is our documentation, and we think owning your content is really important and having your own domain name is critical, yet we have not done a very good job of explaining this to what we are calling Generation 4 users, who probably don't know what a DNS record is, even if they know what DNS stands for, myself included, when I first got started. And so we have to remember, all of us, that the words are part of the design. And too many features, too many technical options can mean a lot of a lot of users get lost. There's no losers in this community. You just get overwhelmed by all the technology when a lot of people would be fine just knowing the basics. So we don't want to push people all into the deep end before they're ready. They'll get frustrated. They'll need rescuing. Many will just give up. But we need to have tools that are easier for people to use that don't need to know what DNS actually stands for. Let's just start out in the shallow end for most people. That get them a domain name, get them something like micro.blog, some kind of friendly, IndieWeb friendly hosting platform instead of self-hosting a WordPress blog maybe at the beginning. I can tell you from my experience interviewing people on Micro Monday that a lot of people have moved from having a hosted micro.blog with us to some sort of web hosting platform that they have a lot more control over how it works and how it looks. But getting people started, I think that's our goal, and we need to, we at micro.blog, and I think we as IndieWeb community need to focus on building things for those people. And so, one size doesn't fit all, even if Generation 4 is not a monolithic group, and it takes a whole range of people. So we want to attract them with easy-to-use platform, with the benefits of owning their own content on their own domain, the promise of a safe and welcoming community, and that gives us the ability, as a community, to reach the broadest range of users, regardless of which generation they fall into. Thanks for listening.
Thanks a bunch. That was great. Let's give another round of applause to Manton and Jean. All right, so I'm back up here, like Tantek mentioned, to talk about readers. And I'm actually going to have Jonathan join me in a minute to share some fun updates about together. Give me a second to sort this out. Great, so I'm Aaron again, hi. I want to talk about social readers, which is, I think, what I'm going to start calling this idea of IndieWeb readers. And I want to talk a little bit about why that is, I think, a good term and why it's important. For a long time, the IndieWeb community has been missing this piece of the ecosystem. We've done a good job of publishing and encouraging people to have a domain and publish content, but there hasn't really been a good story for the other side of that, which is consuming content. There's obviously RSS readers have been around for a long time, and that's like the classic way to follow independent blogs is use an RSS reader. But RSS readers pretty much failed us as a internet community in that they never evolved past just reading. And it turns out that Twitter and Facebook solved that by letting you respond directly in line in the reader. Like if you think about what do you get when you go to twitter.com, it's a reader. You're seeing all your posts from your friends. And right there, you can click the favorite. You can click the heart or the reply button and write a comment. And where does that go? It goes to your Twitter account, right? You can join the conversation very easily from within the reader. We never had that with RSS. The best you got was you could click a button and share the link you're reading to something, like to Twitter, tweet out the link. But you know, that's what we're missing right now, is I want to be able to follow someone's blog and then reply to them directly in there. And that is where the idea of a social reader comes in. And what we've got right now is actually been a lot of work over the last year since last IndieWeb Summit, and it's come together pretty quickly. This is a screenshot of my reader, Monocle. So I developed this. It is not my website. It's a different app. You can actually go and use it as well if your website supports what it takes to use this. But the idea with this is I am following a bunch of different feeds. I'm following my friends' feeds. And when I see something I want to respond to, I can just click the reply button in the reader, write a reply in line, and then click the button to post it. And where does it go? Well, it goes to my website. And that reply gets posted to my website. So I own that comment. And then, like normal, my website sends a web mention to the post I'm replying to so that it can show up as a comment. In this example, this is actually a post from micro.blog, and then when we go look at the micro.blog version, you can see my comment shows up there as well. Where it starts getting really interesting is that, so I mentioned that I wrote this app, Monocle, and that's like my primary one that I use, but there's also iOS and Android apps for this, and these are developed by other community members, some of who are here. And the idea with this is that these apps, developing a reader is a lot of work. Developing the whole stack of, I'm going to manage subscriptions and pull feeds, that's a lot of work. So let's split up that work and divide it between the app and the feed polling and fetching and parsing and normalizing. And what that's been able to do is it's been able to let people who are iPhone developers and Android developers focus on the things that they're good at, which is making iPhone and Android apps, and just the messiness of dealing with server-side parsing and polling and having a database of posts is handled by a server. And like I know that I can open up Xcode and hit the compile button and something will appear on my phone, but it's not going to be good. So I'm not going to ever write an iPhone app like this. But now I get to use an iPhone app that talks to my same server where all my feeds are already collected. And I don't have to sign up for another service. Jonathan, you want to come up here and talk a little bit about Together, which is a JavaScript reader. I pulled up your slides from last time.
Perfect. Yeah. So last year, in the sessions, I came up with a session that said bringing it all together. And the whole notion was, gosh, wouldn't it be great if we had what the social networks have, what the silos have, where you could consume, create, and interact all in one place. And did some slideware and said, hey, let's do this thing, right? And apparently, it at least inspired Grant well enough. So Grant back here, Grant Richmond. So Grant and I have basically worked together on Together over the last year, and honestly, he's done about 98% of the actual code, and you can see here it's a real thing now. So in 1 year, so this is good inspiration for all of you who are in the room when you're coming up with ideas and projects. Who knows what you'll get? At this point, Together is fully featured. You can sign in with IndieAuth. If you have a website that's compatible, you can get it at alltogethernow.io. And if you are a React developer, we would love to have more help, because I'm not a very good one, and Grant is an excellent one, but he's one guy. And you can interact with content. You can do repost. You can reply. It has a full editor now, so you can actually compose slightly longer posts. That's a late-breaking feature that we've added. And it's great. So thanks to Aaron for really doing the hard work on the server side, right? So now we don't have to do that. We can focus on creating a cool user interface. It works as a progressive web app, especially on Android. Kind of works on iOS, but that's Apple's problem, file a bug. But generally speaking, it's pretty great. So that's it.
So the thing that makes this all work is this spec that Tantek has mentioned a couple times, microsub. And the idea with microsub is that it's the interface between the app and the server data. So again, it's separating the responsibilities between client and server. There's a couple of implementations of a server now, one of which I wrote, and that is called Aperture. The idea with this is there's basically no interface on this app. It is just a backend that provides the posts that you're following as an API to apps that actually do the work of showing them to you and providing an interface. But this is the thing that is doing the feed polling and managing your subscriptions. And the idea with this is the list of things you're following is also your data, and you shouldn't have to recreate that every time you sign up for a new reader app. It should essentially, you should be able to use any reader app and it should be able to find your existing list of things you're following. So that's what this provides. Aperture, as of this week, I just opened it up as a public beta. So you can actually go now and sign up and use it and try it out. So what, if you go to this URL, aperture.p3k.io, it will walk you through documentation, getting it set up and installed on your website. It's very similar to a lot of the other getting set up with a web engine server or micropub. Same idea of making sure that your website points to this thing. Yeah, there's documentation on it on the website, and feel free to let me know if any of it's confusing, because I just finished this to launch it for IndieWeb Summit. So yeah, that's my announcement about IndieWeb readers and social readers. So let's have some fun with that this week. So now for something completely different. I would like to introduce William Hertling, who has joined us to give a short talk on a book he wrote. And he wrote a book called Kill Process, which I'm not going to describe too much. I'll let him take the lead on that. But it surprisingly features the IndieWeb in it. And I was somewhat surprised to be reading the book, and all of a sudden, I'm seeing things that seemed awful familiar in it. So, yeah, thank you for joining us.
I'm not projecting.
Do you have a...
I'm not projecting.
Oh,
just
no.
my notes.
Okay, great.
Good. Thank you. Hey, everyone. Thank you, Aaron. So I'm William Hertling. I am so happy to be here today because IndieWeb has been hugely influential on the stuff that I've written. So I write science fiction basically about technology and how it affects people and how it affects society. And I'm probably best known for two books, Avogadro Corp, which I wrote quite a while back, and Kill Process. So the first series I wrote, the Singularity series, was focused on AI and progress toward the technological singularity over like the next 30 years. And it was full of big ideas and basically pie-in-the-sky extrapolations of where technology was going. But when I wrote Kill Process, I wanted to focus much more on the current day, making it an intimate story about people who exist now, grounding it in the technology that exists or that's right on the cusp of being developed. And I wanted to tackle issues that I thought were crucially important. Who owns our data, how we control the flow of our information, and how we can take ownership of our online presence. So just out of curiosity, how many people are familiar with it? Anyone besides Aaron? A few people. All right. Woohoo. For the people who aren't familiar with it, I'll briefly describe the idea. So the main character, Angie, is a database engineer and a data analyst who's also a domestic abuse survivor. And she works at the world's largest social networking company called Tomo, and she uses her access to everyone's data to profile abusers, hunt them down, and kill them, mostly through various computer hacks, pretty much all of which are real or close to real. So when Tomo, but she goes through this big change. Tomo violates its users' privacy in yet another new way. And Angie, for the first time, really sees that Tomo is the greatest abuser of all. People cannot escape the social networking giant. All of their friends and relatives are on it. And if they try to quit, they're basically cut off from their real-world social network. and they become imprisoned in a system that commits one abuse of power after another. Does that sound familiar? So Angie decides the greatest good she can do is to destroy Tomo, and the way she's going to do that is to build a new social network based upon principles of decentralization and data ownership and federation. Now, coincidentally, like right at the time I'm in the middle of writing this, completely independent from anything else, I met Aaron, and I got an introduction to IndieWeb. And within a few minutes of talking, it was obvious that IndieWeb embodied a ton of important principles that were directly relevant to the book, and so I tried to weave as many of those into the novel as possible. But as much as I like the principles of IndieWeb, what Angie creates in the book is something different. And the reasons why it's different, I think, are important to understand, to look at the future of IndieWeb and what that means. So Angie builds a platform called Tapestry. Now, when I thought about Tapestry, I was looking squarely at what generation 4 of IndieWeb would be, because I wanted Tapestry to have to work for anyone, regardless of their technological literacy. And that meant it had to be as easy to begin using as Facebook, but with the potential to grow to more sophisticated usage over time. Now, like IndieWeb, Tapestry features a plurality of projects rather than monoculture. Tapestry themselves builds both a reference implementation of every single component, as well as providing the APIs so that anyone else can build their own implementation. So all the things you'd expect, right? Microblogging, photo sharing, long-form articles, commenting, friend management, readers, everything's an individual component, and users of Tapestry can onboard and choose all the components they want to use. Preventing lock-in is really crucial. So Tapestry mandates that users' data is stored on the data storage service of the user's choosing in a well-defined format. This was just one way to make it easier for users to switch between implementations. And it's basically a principle of Tapestry that anything that creates a switching burden is strictly forbidden. So lock-in as a business strategy is simply not allowed. And that's a big difference, right, from the current world. In the current world, lock-in is considered a benefit, but it's only a benefit for the company that creates it, and it sucks for everyone else. IndieWeb is also focused on, today, the public sharing of information, which totally makes sense when you consider the web's roots and how it's been used over time. But it fails to take into account the fact that people who use social media want more control over who can view their content, and we can debate whether that leads to a more authentic life or not, but from a pragmatic perspective, if we want to get people off of Facebook, we need to give them ways to share content that they're comfortable with. In a distributed and federated social network, that's a challenging problem to solve when my friends list is managed by one service and my friend's friend list is managed by another, and all our identities are distributed. I actually spent like a week whiteboarding at work. I didn't tell anybody what I was working on, but I was like, I'm going to make sure this can all work, and like I'm doing RESTful calls and sequence diagrams, and at the end of it, I was convinced it is plausible, it can be done. So I wove that into the novel. Now, most of the problems we have with the corporate web that exists today stem from the fact that money is involved. Companies and people want to make money. But as a writer, like I also want to make money. Like making money isn't bad. So I felt like that was an important thing I had to address. Now, one of the other things is I really, really hate ads. So I wanted to figure out a system for that too, right? So it's like kind of cool. Like writing a novel is inventing all of this stuff without having to actually write the code. That's why it's so much better than coding. So what I came up with was that Tapestry would have this system of micropayments and basically a framework for tracking participants and content delivery. And really, this is like the core value that Tapestry adds behind defining APIs. So if I share a photo and you view that photo, I should get something for creating the content. The people who host the photo should get something for it. The reader that you use should get something for it. Like everyone deserves to get a reward for their contribution. And having the system of micropayments would enable that. And it also enabled, by having one system of micropayments, it also enables different ways for money to get injected into the system. Am I going to pay a monthly fee and get an ad-free experience across the entire web? Am I going to allow ads and now have that do it? Or am I going to have some other form of sponsorship or subsidization? So briefly summarizing the differences, right? IndieWeb has historically focused on tools for developers and the technically sophisticated. And it has a barrier to entry, and I'm going to talk more about that. Tapestry tries to make those same benefits available for the end user who doesn't understand how it works and just wants to use it. IndieWeb has also focused primarily on self-hosting and people-scale solutions, whereas Tapestry focuses on large-scale service-oriented solutions. But then it takes these steps to ensure that users still have agency by avoiding any sort of lock-in. IndieWeb focuses on public content. Tapestry looks at the many different granularities of access control. And historically, IndieWeb doesn't address money at all, but Tapestry recognizes that money is a primary driver behind the web that we've built. And facilitating the exchange of money in a way that scales seamlessly with how people use the internet, right, it's intrinsic to broad-scale change in the web. Having a revenue model isn't evil, but it is helpful to both long-term stability as well as the scalability of what we create. So each of these differences is something I see as critically important for the future of the web. And the more IndieWeb finds a way to address these issues, the bigger the scale of change it can make. So I'll finish with one other anecdote. So I was at a homebrew website meetup a couple of years ago, and all I can remember was that Aaron's host was under some sort of attack at the time. So we're all sitting there, we're all talking about IndieWeb, we're all talking about our websites, and Aaron's basically just trying to defend his website. And now this is the sort of stuff I deal with in my day job, right? I'm a full stack developer. But what I don't have is I don't have very much time, right? I'm splitting my time between my day job, writing, kids, partners, and I can't guarantee that I can drop everything the way Aaron is at that moment to deal with my website. What's more realistic is my site would go down and I'd discover it like days or weeks later and still not have time to deal with it. So here we are, we're talking about IndieWeb. I'm considering moving my blog to a self-hosted website, and I'm not actually sure I have what it takes to do this. And if I don't have what it takes when I've been a full-time developer since 1995, then that means that the overwhelming majority of Facebook users out there, all those hundreds of millions of people, right, they have no chance whatsoever. So I'm basically like an IndieWeb Gen 1 user who wants a Gen 4 experience because I'm lazy and I don't have much time. So there's nothing I want more than to rebel against the powers that be, right? I want to know what it will take to topple Facebook. And so it was a little disheartening to me that night that IndieWeb, as promising as it was not enough as it existed, right, to make that scale of change. So let me talk about my protagonist, Angie, for a second, right? She also wants to rebel against the establishment. She's me after all. She's a powerful person, and she'll do anything to accomplish her goals. She'll kill people if she has to. I don't advocate for that. But the other thing about her is that she basically wants to sit behind a computer and code. Like, that's how she wants to spend her time. And she values what she can create when she's programming. And she's dismissive of basically everyone else. She's dismissive of management. She's dismissive of people creating slides. She hates that stuff. But the biggest change that she has to go through in the book is realizing that if she wants to change the world, she can only do so much as a lone coder. She's going to require working with other people, getting funding for what she wants to do. At some point in time, she's going to have to make a presentation instead of code. And she hates every moment of all of that. But she does it anyway because she recognizes that's the world that she lives in. And she ultimately places pragmatism over principles to a certain extent. And she'll do what she has to do. So when I come back to IndieWeb, right, I see a bunch of very passionate people working to take back the web, and I see them using principles that have worked well over a long time, right? Self-dogfooding, working code, scratching out personal itches. These are all valid, effective approaches to working, right? I use them myself. I think we're all comfortable with them. But we desperately need to break the world free of the corporate web. And that means we're called on to do more. It means we have to be pragmatic. It means that it's going to require working and communicating with others outside of the developer community. That's going to make us, challenge us, move us out of our comfort zone. If IndieWeb is going to change the world, it means building larger scale services. And if we don't want to do it all ourselves, that's great. It means reaching out to people who will do those things. And if you have read any of my books, you know I see programmers as the heroes who save the world. Guess what? That's you guys. All right, so before I end, I'm going to talk briefly about Kill Switch, my next novel. That's going to be out in September. It takes place a couple of years after Kill Process. Tapestry has grown significantly, and now they're the 900-pound gorilla of the social networking world. Privacy and individual control over one's data is more important than ever to Angie and company, but they've been hit with a FISA court order that will mandate backdoors into Tapestry, with the result that the government will soon be able to read whatever they want, negating much of the benefit of Tapestry's privacy features. This is unacceptable to Angie, but she has no legal recourse. Now, Cory Doctorow has compared privacy to a clean, safe drinking water supply. He says it's possible for an individual to build a water catchment system, including a cistern, to last through the dry season and add the purification and the plumbing necessary. But what we've discovered as a society is that it's more effective and efficient to make the government responsible for centrally purifying and distributing drinking water. So Cory says that privacy is similar, right? The government should be mandating and enforcing privacy, and that's more reasonable than each of us trying to maintain our own security. But what choice do you have when the government is actively hostile to privacy? When the backdoors that they create and maintain actually weaken security? Then there's no choice but to solve the problem ourselves. So Angie decides she'll need a technological solution, an approach that will guarantee everyone's privacy even in the face of these government-mandated backdoors. And I won't go into the details now, but if you add onion routing, client-side containers, and distributed ledgers, it is possible to maintain the features of the web and social media we have today while simultaneously making it resistant to even government-level intrusions. And that's the majority of the plotline in Kill Switch. In parallel, the themes I explore include freedom, control, legitimate versus abuse of power, and the effects of power on those who have it and those who don't. And Kill Switch will be out in September. Thanks.
Thanks very much. That was great. All right. So we're going to take a 5-minute break and then come back and do a quick round of lightning talk intros. So take a break, grab more coffee, use the restroom, and come back in 5 minutes. Thanks.
I have your iPad, by the way.
Oh, thanks.
But also, the men's restroom is out of paper towels.
Oh, no. Okay. See if I can find.
Is there somebody I can find? for
Yeah.
you, or-
If
On YouTube?
Yeah. Okay. All right, everybody, let's take a seat and get started again.
I'm looking for a GitHub post.
Oh, as your intro? If you can hear me, clap once. If you can hear me, clap twice. If you can hear me, clap 3 times. All right, that worked. All right. Okay. Everyone take a seat again. We're going to get started.
Are we back online with Berlin? Yeah. Oh, all right. Hello and welcome back, everyone. All right, quick, what's going to happen now type explanation. We're doing intros and lightning intros and demos, which means y'all get to like optionally come on up here and take about a minute to basically say hi. Like, my name is Tantek Celik, and this is my website, tantek.com. And the coolest thing that I think I've done in the last year is I added the ability for myself to post GitHub issues, replies to issues, and responses or reactgy to issues. And so if folks want to line up behind Aaron here one at a time, maybe like about 3 or 4 of you at once, and get ready, then we can queue people up and get people going through as quickly as possible. So Aaron's over here. Whoever wants to go after Aaron, go ahead, line up behind him. And as long as there's like about 3 people there, just keep lining up. Once there's about 3 or 4 people up, then no rush, just stay seated and wait till the queue drops back down. All right, so with that explanation, that inspired me to add in-stream reply context, which seems like a small thing, but is this like little gray thing on my home stream to say, when you see this note, it's actually a reply to something else. In this case, it's a reply to this particular issue on there. And that's just like interspersed with all my other notes that I post to my site, photos, responses to tweets, RSVPs, and I'll just show you one of these GitHub responses in particular. Let's see here. Still working on getting HTTPS working on my website. And that's okay. It's okay to have things that are broken. It's always things to improve. All right, so here's what it looks like on my site. It looks like just another comment, but I can also view it on GitHub. Assuming that loads, and there you go. So there is the copy on GitHub that I didn't interact with at all. This happened completely automatically from my website posting it, talking to Bridgie posting it on GitHub on my behalf. And this is an issue I commented on the Beaker browser project, which is an awesome attempt to create essentially like a whole different way of storing and sharing information that's completely client-to-client decentralized. Not just decentralized at the server level, which is a lot of things that we do in the IndieWeb, but down to the client level. And so I figured it was a good place to demonstrate, hey, I can decentralize your centralized use of GitHub with my website. Anyway. And that's it. So that's my demo. Aaron? One more thing I should add is that we actually have been running with a Berlin remote participation site since this morning. So there's about 8 or so people in Berlin that are watching live and are in the chat live on chat.indieweb.org. So if you want to like log on there and say hi, you can say hi, especially Annika. Thanks to Annika for setting that up, and they're remote participating. So that's
Until like 2, right? Because then it's like bedtime there.
yeah, as long as they can stay awake, exactly. Time zones. Yeah.
If you have something you can just pull up on a URL, we can avoid switching laptops and you can just use mine. Hi, I'm Aaron, aaronpk.com. Oh, you can't see my screen. Let's do that again. Great. Yeah, aaronpk.com. I don't have a whole lot of updates on my site that I've done recently because I've been mostly working on the reader stuff. But one of the things that I did relatively recently, actually at the last IndieWeb Camp Baltimore, which I'm still pretty thrilled about, is this little pixel art grid thing. So if you go to my website, and you can actually start clicking these and change the colors. And oh, it looks like someone's racing me. And as soon as it stops changing for like 5 minutes, it takes a snapshot, and they all get posted in a feed here, so you can see what it's looked like over time. Pretty fun. So that's my demo. And do you want to use your laptop?
Yeah,
Okay.
I have a bunch of tabs. All right, let's see if the AV gods smile upon me. That's exciting. Wow, it worked. I'm going to hit the green button. Look at that. I have notes. Hi, everybody. My name is Jason McIntosh. This is my homepage. It is at jmac.org. As I've been saying to Aaron and Tantek and a lot of y'all over the last 24 hours or so, I sort of moved sideways into discovering IndieWeb only at the top of the year, and I've been hurriedly applying it to many things. Yeah, that's my homepage. You can see at the top there is a pronunciation here in IPA, which if you click on that, it plays a nice MP3 of my voice. That is mentioned on the pronunciation page of the wiki, and that came out of a conversation on the IndieWeb chat between me and Martijn van der Ven, and I know how to pronounce his first name because he did the same trick as me. And I just double-checked that just now. The main reason I'm into IndieWeb is its potential for blogging and self-publishing. I keep a blog at fogknife.com. It's just yet another vanity domain. I've been working on this since 2014 on my own static site generator called Plurd, which also has a page on the IndieWeb wiki. It is a static site generator. It has a mention on StaticGen. If you're interested in the idea of static site generators, you can see that this is basically if you want to make a thing and you want to like learn a new programming language or something else, you can join many other people in writing a static site generator in the technology of your source. I think Plurd is about halfway down. I was actually just looking, and somebody added a star to it, like just today on GitHub, so thank you. According to this. So, yeah, it's also free and open source software. It has a GitHub page. You will note it has 2 branches because the other branch is the IndieWeb branch. It's version 2. Don't use it, but if you want to, it's there, and it has no documentation. But among the things actually, going back here. So what if IndieWeb stuff that I've added to Fogknife is, oh look, backfeed. This is what really got me into IndieWeb. There's nice face files here and comments that are grabbed by way of Bridgie from Twitter and appear here as web mentions. I run my own web mention endpoint, and some of these, so yeah, you can tell which ones are tweets and which ones are more sort of bare naked web mentions by whether or not sometimes there's an icon there or not. It can also send web mentions now, so I sort of have a, that includes web mentions that my blog sends to itself when I link to one of my own posts those appear as sort of backlinks on the post, so it makes sort of a homegrown related post feature by accident, which is kind of cool. So I know I'm running more than a minute, so to skip ahead, I haven't released or documented the version 2 of Plurd, but I have been releasing some libraries for the Perl programming language, which Plurd is written in, including Web Microformats 2 and Web Mention. These are all singing, all dancing modules that you can find on the CPAN. Web Mention has an object-oriented model for building and receiving and sending web mentions in the Perl programming language. I would very much appreciate feedback on any of this technology, and that's what I've been working on. Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Chris Aldrich, and I am at bafosacco.com, if I spell it right. We know who never visits my website. Mostly because he reads it in his reader, I bet. So I've done a lot in the last year, but I'm going to mention one thing that I've done this week, and it actually doesn't appear in the setup on the front page here. So I support all of these different types of posts that you see in the mini menu at the top. The next one I'm going to add is highlights. So I have tried to. I do a lot of reading online. I annotate, I highlight, I keep a lot of data for everything I read and consume online and things I find interesting. So because I do that, I thought I would create a post type to solely capture highlights that I make on other websites. And the first one I did was not only to create a setup so it's easy for other people to read, but for me to consume on the back end as well. But if you click on the link for the link itself, it should automatically scroll and do a yellow highlight on my site, which is using a piece of the IndieWeb, somebody else much smarter than I think it was. I took my inspiration from Kartik Prabhu and Kevin Marks for fragmentions, so that with a few small snippets of code, you can click on a link on a site and go to it. So I was able to highlight this on my site, and I've gotten it working in the last week with Hypothesis, which is an online tool for highlighting. I didn't do a link back, so it doesn't do the full circuit here. But I also can, if I'd rather highlight, if I can. He's got too many pop-ups here. I'll have to fix some of that UI. So I can highlight a piece on my site and click a link, and it will automatically generate a link to that piece that I can then share out somewhere else. And then with this URL, you can then come back to my site and see it. So now I have almost a full round circuit for using Hypothesis Online to highlight stuff, send it to my site automatically, create a view so that others reading it can see, here's where it came from, here's the article, here's the author, here's the highlight itself, and then do a full round trip circuit through those three pieces. And because it's small pieces, it works pretty quick. So, who's next?
Apparently HDMI is over here, so this is going to be interesting. Alrighty. Shuffle, shuffle, shuffle. All right, I'm at an odd resolution here. Let me just do one quick thing. Did that work? Yes, okay. All right. So my name's Jared White, and my website's jaredwhite.com, and I just basically rebooted everything early this year with basically the principles of IndieWeb in my mind, but I'm just starting to roll out actually implementing like actual IndieWeb technologies under the hood. So literally this morning I was working on adding micro formats and so forth. But design-wise, I really wanted to build something that felt like it was heavily inspired by social media. You could call it scaleomorphism looking at social media. So even though this is my website, I have an avatar. I have things like you can follow me, which is actually sign up for my email newsletter, or I have RSS and JSON feeds. You can instant message me, which is really just an email form, but I'm trying to introduce UI elements that people who aren't super nerd techie people might be familiar with. List of projects on one side, list of my latest podcast or posts on the other side. And I'm experimenting with different types of posts. So there's a link post that is like a little excerpt from another page on the web and my comments on it. I have just tiny, short little micro blog posts. Pictures. So even though I'm on Instagram, almost anything I post on Instagram, I actually post on my site as well. I don't have anything fancy set up like Posse, so I'm manually doing it twice, but whatever. And so that's my website. And on the back end of it, I post using software I built in Ruby on Rails. So I can actually just come on here and post a new thought, and it happens pretty quickly. Same with images and other things, podcast episodes, even email newsletters. I actually generate the email newsletter HTML myself through my own software, and then that just gets sent over through Campaign Monitor's API. So at the base level, I'm owning all the content and even the entire process of how I create all my content. And the last thing I'll show real quick is, oh, okay, thank you.
Sharing dongle safe? I think it is. I'm guessing it's not these days. I actually know him, so I think it's okay. All right. I'm Jonathan LaCour, cleverdevil.io. Here is my site. I'll just share one brief thing that I've done lately, maybe, possibly. So down here in the bottom right-hand corner of my site, a little thing that you can always see. It shows the current status of my... I'm sitting right in front of it. Okay. You can see the current status of my... okay. Watch this. Hold on. Whoop. So you can see the current status of my battery. Whoa. If I'm on Wi-Fi network or not, if I'm moving or not, and where my current location is. And if you click on that, it takes you to a page called Now, which actually shows you where I am on a map. Right there. And if you're logged in to the account, which I am, I can actually show you actively collecting my location. This was from today, which means I haven't moved much. I'm going to go back one day because I was on an airplane yesterday. And again, this is private to me, so only I can see it. And if the Wi-Fi will work. There we go. It's a very long straight line from Los Angeles up to Portland. And you can see that at one point in time, I was at 36 meters elevation, sitting still, 60% battery. And I'm doing that using Aaron's excellent Overland software, or Overland, or whatever we pronounce it, sending it up to some web services that I wrote, all up on GitHub, and it aggregates it all into S3 and does all sorts of fanciness. So, yeah, yay.
I just want to point out for everybody else demoing, Tantek has a little timer set up here for the countdown. So watch that as you watch for your time.
I'm giving him 90 seconds. You got 30 seconds of slot.
All right.
I'm AJ. This is my blog. The little reflow thing that you just saw happen, I do not know why that happens. It's, I think, a Chrome bug. It's really weird, like, it doesn't happen if you refresh the page. Anyway, this is not the point. I have not actually done almost any user-facing changes on my website in the last year. The main thing I did was I like retro things, so I made this little mode where it looks like a monospaced, like, 90s webpage. The other thing that I have done, mostly what I've been spending my time is lazy mention. So this website is completely static. It's built with a static site generator that I wrote because, like, of course. But then I wanted to do outbound web mentions, and so I wrote lazy mention. And the reason I'm showing you a GitHub page is because I have invested exactly 0 time into making a UI for it. But like that is gonna happen real soon now. So yeah, I think that's it. I don't know, I'm probably missing something, but oh well.
Hi, everybody. I'm Gregor. My website is gregorlove.com. See if I can type and talk at the same time.
Notice you didn't capitalize that R. It's not just us in chat, it's you too.
So most recently, over the last year, I've been working on posting read posts. I was doing this manually at first, and I was keeping it really simple. Like, I want to read, here's the title, and I usually link it off to Amazon. Just recently, oops. What? Typo. I launched indiebookclub.biz, which the homepage isn't very exciting, but you can log in here, and it's a micropub client, so you can post the title, the authors, the ISBN number, or a DOI name if you have that. And it also does tags, and you submit that, and it sends it off to your site. It also shows on, you have your own profile on indiebookclub.biz, so if your site doesn't support micropub yet, you can still use this and eventually pull it over to your site later when you do support micropub. That's it.
Hi, I'm Jamie. I don't know how to operate a Mac. Okay.
It has keyboard.
So my website is jamie.thesharps.us, but what I really want to talk about is comicrocket.com, because thanks, Eric. Because the thing that I really want to be working on right now is enabling webcomic creators, other people who publish long-form serialized works, fan fiction, whatever, to follow IndieWeb principles. And so Comic Rocket is an example of how not to do this. I've been working on it for 10 years. I'm trying to work out how to do this now. So that's my my thing I'm trying to do next. The thing I did most recently, I wrote a WordPress plugin over the weekend for RFC 5005, which basically nobody has ever implemented or heard of. That's one step in this. So that's my thing. Thank you.
I don't know why I brought up my computer, because I really don't need it. Oh, that's not. Okay, it's sitting on the floor now. I'm Lillian. My domain is anomaly.net. I really don't have that much to demo, but I mainly came up because I felt like we needed a little diversity in the panels. There were a lot of tall people, and I felt like we needed some short people to come up and present. So this is my domain, anomaly.net. The thing that we implemented last year that slightly broke when I put the Microformats 2 plugin on, which I would love to see fixed, is I now have check-ins displaying on my front page. And if you click, you get to a map, which is very cool. That's pretty much all I've implemented. And then the other thing I want to show off, which Aaron told me not to show off because I didn't build it, but he built it for me, is anomaly.world, which I went on this trip last year by train from Dublin, Ireland to Shanghai, China. And this is an absolutely freaking awesome map that he built that is all of my Foursquare check-ins. And if you click on them, you can see the pictures I took on my Foursquare check-ins, including, let's go to the Great Wall of China. I feel like that's an exciting way to end this very short demo. Where is the Great Wall of China? Yeah, I'm working on it. I'm working on it, all right? And I think it's right there. Let's see. Oh, yeah. It's hard to find the check-ins in China because there we go, look at that. And we're at the Great Wall at Bottling. And ta-da! Anomaly.world.
Hey, I'm Malcolm. Sorry to break the diversity change that was just happening there, but I am Australian, so maybe that's enough. My website is unicyclic.com, if I can spell. You're missing a bunch of keys here, Aaron. All right. Let's hope my website's up. Cool. So this is my website, and you can actually log into it too if you're interested in checking it out. It's got a built-in reader and a bunch of stuff. My actual homepage is a path on this website. So it's just Mal. And it just has a bunch of links, a bit about me. I have a blog on another path. But while I'm here, I'll just go through my links. I think I added some stuff recently. My big project for the start of this year was a crazy thing called IndiePayMe, which is like a distributed ledger. Check it out. I won't click through to it now, but have a look if you want to chat about payment stuff. Yeah, let me know. I'll just go through to my blog. I've got a reader as well, but it's a private page, so I can't show it to you, but there's a public reader at unicyclic.com/IndieWeb with a bunch of people from here that you can have a look at too. And this is what my blog looks like. This is my project for tomorrow, making sure this doesn't happen, basically. Cool. I'll leave it at that. Thanks.
Okay. So my name is Jim Pick, jimpick.com. That's my blog. I haven't updated it since last year. This is my third IndieWeb. Drove down from Vancouver, BC. I live in, and I've been really active in the DAT project in the last year. I actually quit my job, and I've been working full-time freelancing, building demos for people using these technologies. I'm really excited. The IndieWeb stuff really got me into the other stuff because I'm really excited about the idea, like how cheaply can anybody make a website without having to sign up for things? And things like Bigger Browser are really, really exciting. I've been working on a lot of technologies related to that. This year I built a collaborative pixel art editor using for a client using the DAT project technologies. And I'd like to just highlight my last project, which was a web-based project I was actually contracted by the Code for Science and Society here in Portland, who runs the DAT project, and it's and it's blogged on their website, and it's a let's see, where is it? Oh, there it is. A collaborative shopping list built on data. And, okay. And it's based, you can run it on your phone. It's a progressive web app. Works online, offline, probably or syncs via that.
Hello, I'm Grant, and it's grant.codes. So, trying to think what the last thing I did was. Got quite a colourful little website. I think something I'm maybe going to work a bit more on this weekend is the theme switcher. You can choose any colour you want to make my website. So if you want dark theme, you want light theme, whatever, you can have any color and it'll work. The last thing I did was inspired by Jonathan. I fixed a bit of my map page. So I have a page that has my location as well. There's a lot of false positives on it where places I've not been, but if you leave this running for a long time, it will eventually start loading my trip around North America. And yeah, I think, there we go. So this is where I was driving for the last year. But that's it, I'll leave it at that. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Matthew Lippincott. This is my first IndieWeb Summit. I'm one of your 3rd gen users looking to connect to some 4th gen users. My personal blog for 9 years now has been headfullafair.com. And it's all about kites and balloons that I like to fly. If you're interested in the latest development in tethered aerostats, you might want to follow me. And I started putting this together as a Jekyll blog, thanks to Michael Rose, who really made all the templates and stuff that I'm borrowing. And I converted it to Jekyll because I wanted to unite not just WordPress stuff that I'd been doing, but posts that were in a custom Bootstrap installation that the nonprofit I used to work for, Public Lab, had created, and put everything I'd done on Flight over the past 9 years in one place. And I've been increasingly able to do that. I guess my real interest in being here is I do quite a bit of documentation. I'm a documentarian, and I've been doing projects like this where I am creating documentation that's internal to a project that then becomes external documentation. I'm really interested in how, with both education projects and also product design, we integrate feedback from a social web into documentation in our own sites in a coherent way. So I'm really interested in learning and standardizing this stuff. And I like drawing stuff. And if you're interested in flying kites, I have a 16-foot banner in the corner that says evict ICE. And I was going to go hang it from a kite down in Fields Park while everyone's stuck in traffic trying to go home. So find me if you're interested. Yeah.
Hi everyone, my name is Emre, and I'm going to show you what I've been working on for the last year. This is an open source JavaScript library that allows people to embed social functionality to their websites, which is the tag basically. And it has IndieWeb compatibility, so all the profiles have HCard, and then all the streams, news feeds have activity streams compatible. And like you see, it's just just a one tag basically, and you can embed this to your static websites hosted on GitHub or anything. Like, let me show you mine, for example. This is my personal homepage on GitHub, and I have my contact. This is for example a GraphJS widget, and so this is just launched recently. You have all the documentation here for embedding forum, authentication, anything. And you can get started from here in just a few clicks. You know, it's just a few steps, easy steps that allows you to start these widgets for your site. That's it.
Hoping this works. I just made it this morning. Okay, great. Cool. So my name is Michael Tumim. This is brand new. So I just discovered IndieWeb this year, and I'm just really excited because I feel like I've been working with the same spirit, the same vision for like 3 or 4 years. So here's a bunch of my stuff. It's been exciting to put it together within the principles. So I just made this personal page. So here's one thing I've been working on is I think these things are complementary. That's a synchronization algorithm or protocol that I'm building into HTTP, which lets you synchronize sites together, which does a lot of the same stuff as these IndieWeb protocols, which are synchronizing data. So you post here and it's synchronized over here. So I think this is probably pretty relevant. I've got a page here for this new version of HTTP that has synchronization. And what I'm building right here, so I'm building email, a new version of the email protocol on top of this new synchronized version of the web, where everything's synchronized. One thing that it lets you do is both have email that's also a blog, because you can send a message to public. Since your email is hosted on the web protocol, anyone can just fetch it. And so you can send a message to the public. So that gives you the equivalent of a blog. It also gives you the equivalent of a social feed, because you can send it to lots of people. Here's this little widget I built where you can start selecting some people with their faces, and it suggests more people so that you can start with a couple people and then drag it out and get a lot more friends. So I'm trying to integrate all these things together. I'd love to talk more. I'm just kind of stoked. Okay.
We had a really great streak of people using this laptop and not dealing with IT issues in front of you, and I'm going to be the guy who breaks that streak. HTML, probably, yeah, thanks. There we go. All right. Sure. All right, I'm Ryan Barrett. My site is snarf.org. Runs on WordPress, thanks to great work from David here and others in the community. So new thing I did recently is read posts. Gregor and other people have been pioneering this, so I posted a book I love to read to my daughter. But I really want to spend my time today. I'm in an unusual position that a lot of my projects see into all of your websites, and so it affords me an ability to see some stats and kind of see some community-wide activity, and so I want to show a few of those here. First is a project I launched last year at IndieWeb Summit, IndieMap. Big publicly available crawl of all of your and everyone else's in the IndieWeb websites. So thousands of sites, millions of pages, third of a T of HTML, all publicly available. It's got some nice visualizations here. This is indiemap.org. Does a bunch of visualizations, metrics and stats. Most interestingly, most of you, if you were around last year, so if you go to indiemap.org/yourdomain.json, you can see a ton of analytics about who do you link to, who links to you, which microformats do you use, that kind of thing. The other thing you all may know me from is running Bridgie, which sends comments and likes from silos back to your website. I put together some stats about it now and then, so I'm going to show you just a few. This graph you may have seen. This is since launch growth by feature, backfeed or publish. A notable feature here. No prizes for guessing what that was, but many of you may have heard already. Facebook. growth by accounts. The other interesting thing here is this little green sliver at the very top is GitHub. Thanks to Tomtek for graciously pointing that out. And then finally, my favorite metric for Bridgie is the number of unique domains that have successfully been sent and received a web mention, and that's approaching 2,000 here. And also, you'll notice the blue line, number of web mentions that we know. This is just Bridgie, but successfully crossed 1 million, and we think there's way more than that in the wild total, so we celebrated that recently. So round of applause to you all for making that happen.
Hi everyone, so my name is Jack Jameson, and my website is jackjameson.net. There we go. But the project that I think I'm most excited about that I've worked on in the past year is Yarn's Indie Reader. It's a WordPress plugin, consumes RSS, and HFeed is sort of built upon Whisper Follow with some design inspiration from like Woodwind. But as you've seen, there's also these great readers like Together and Monaco that are using microsub, and I think the mistake I made was not using microsub. So my goal for this weekend is to learn how to use microsub, and my what I would love to do is learn how to turn this into some kind of like WordPress-based microsub server, which would be cool. I don't know how to do it, so please teach me how to do that or help me. Thank you very much.
All right. See if that comes up. Hi, everyone. My name is Marty. My website is my name, Marty McGuire, with a dot before the R-E. Oh, what's going on here? That's very bad. Like Ryan, I just recently, wow, that's extremely weird. Good enough. Like Ryan, I recently added read posts to my site inspired by Indie Book Club, but that also got me inspired to take all of my Goodreads data and embed it into my site. So I now have a lot of read posts that I need to make look better, but I'm very excited about that. The thing I actually wanted to show today is a little tool that I built on Glitch that I hope can kind of, it's open source, so I hope it kind of kickstarts people making a bunch of micropub clients to do random things. This one is called Kapowski. It uses Giphy to find GIFs and then post them to your website. This uses micropub in the background, so being logged in, I can like fire this away to my site very quickly. My site is not very fast at compiling. But if you don't have a micropub, you can also just come here and get some HTML to copy and paste. And I want to thank Greg McFerry for that idea, because you can be independent on the web without doing all of the IndieWeb building blocks. While that churns, I would also like to do the remote demos, if that's cool. So we'll kick it off with Martijn first. So Martijn's website, he's at vanderven.se/Martijn, and his demo is his H-card, which you can see all of the information here is human readable, human visible, but has some really fun stuff in here like Hogwarts, yeah, his Pottermore Hogwarts house. All I see is Pottermore, so you know, there's always opportunity. So if you've heard of a micro format for a person, like something that might go on an H card, check and see if Martijn's done it. It's probably there. Next up is Eddie. He's at eddiehinkle.com. He's another remote person today, and this is his website. And one of his cool features is this bar across the top is all the things that he is watching. So this is like updated separately from the main feed of his posts. And this one I think is photos. Yeah. So that's a cool design. I like that. And the last remote that I have is Vanessa, whose image you saw earlier, I think, on the Micro Monday. So this is her site, and she has this set up going to micro.blog and then has web mentions showing up on her site as well. And she doesn't know what she's going to do next, she says, because she started from 0 3 months ago, and now she's here. So she feels like this is what a new person can accomplish, which is pretty cool. And let's see if my site was compiled. No, I have to get off of Jekyll, you guys. I really thought my site would have had my GIF up here by now. Oh, yes, yes. Load it. There we go. All right, yeah.
All right, I'm in the process of migrating my blog to Linode. So give you a quick screenshot. I'm using Docker to get isolation. And here is a live view. You can see there's a container for the web server, and a container for the database, and a container for PHP FPM. And I just added a user. So let's go to indielogin.com. Oh, and the Let's Encrypt is running in its own container on demand. And Easy Pass. Not quite easy enough. And authenticate. There you go. And it actually has some of my posts. It's not no theme yet, so turns out moving a WordPress blog is fairly involved. So there it is.
Let's see how my connection works here. So for those of you who haven't seen me pop up in like 6 other demos for some reason, my name is David Shansky. I do a lot of the WordPress stuff in the community. So, and yeah, of course we know it that now it will stop working, right? Maybe I should use yours. Oh, it is finally up there? It is disappearing? Okay. Oh, it did that thing where there are 2 monitors and... Well, yeah, because it's doing that thing where it's creating a second monitor. I apologize. Now I have to tell it that there's only 1 monitor. Where is that setting? Why do they move everything around every time they do an update of something? Anyway, so that should do merit. There. Okay. Do I want to keep these settings? Yes. Okay. Sorry about that. Okay. So this is my website. At the bottom of it. It's a few pages in. So it contains all of the various things that I am testing at any given time. For example, over the last few months, with the help of Chris Aldrich over there, I've started posting audio posts, which together form a podcast. So I am doing that with the whole idea that it will annoy the heck out of everyone who will complain to me, and I will put in better features. So it does have a feed. You can see some of the check-ins that I was testing to make sure still work from Own Your Swarm. Photo posts, and the last thing that I did was based on somebody's suggestion. This is the WordPress admin UI. And you may notice, because all of these posts here have no explicit title, they all say no title, which annoyed someone until they suggested to me that if it has no title, that it should try to figure one out from whatever is there. So if you look, these ones have no title, but they do have one that appears in the interface now. So you might actually be able to tell what it was. Yay! Yeah. So I guess that covers everything. I'll be back at some point, I'm sure.
Thank you for improving my website with me doing nothing.
One more.
I don't have a dongle.
Which one do you need?
I mean, USB-C.
Oh. Oh, yeah, great.
Oh, you have a USB-C dongle? Handy? Okay. Is it wireless? What's going on here? Oh, HDMI. Let's see. Oh. Hi, I'm Eric Drexel. I'm just going to demo my little known blog that I've been running for a little while. It's very simple. Well, it's I have to run the XR&R command manually. Why don't we just plug in yours? Okay. Yeah.
What's the URL?
It's edrex.pdxhub.org. I've had so many blogs over the years, and I've been very poor about migrating content from previous blogs. So and my whole thing is more back end. I'm always in pursuit of I'm always in pursuit of gathering up all my content from everywhere and putting it in one bucket. And so I work with a open source project called PerKeep, which is sort of trying to do that. And one day I'm going to implement an IndieWeb app that runs on top of PerKeep and uses it as its backing store. This is all, everything's on the back burner and it's coming along. So yeah, I've mostly just been using, so known, I don't know if this is fixed in the latest version, but it doesn't handle JPEGs that have rotation in the EXIF very well, as you can see. So I've been just posting my social updates to Facebook, here and then linking them to Facebook, which causes them to be down prioritized, but my close friends still see them, and they see that there are alternatives, and so I'm trying to draw people out gradually. Yep. And I'm going to be just working on setting up other indie websites and figuring out WordPress for my friend. So.
All right, I think that's the end of the demos. We are doing pretty good on time. I believe that takes us to group photo followed by lunch. Is that right, Tantak?
Yeah.
Great. So before we break for group photo, the way this is going to work is we're going to, I think we can have a nice photo out in the courtyard in that shade behind it, so we don't have to stand in the sun, obviously. We'll try to all cram in there, get a photo, and then break for lunch. There's a food cart pod nearby, so probably this is too big of a group to literally all go there together. So feel free to just grab 5 or 10 people and head over in a group. And you can either eat in the park up there. There's a nice place to sit near there, or come back here, bring food here, and sit in the courtyard. And we will come back in 1 hour at 1:30 to do session scheduling. And we'll explain more about that, but it looks like people have already got a head start on that here, so you're on top of it. Yeah, anything else you want to add, Tantek?
So that was an amazingly diverse set of websites that we saw, different approaches and things. I hope you saw something that inspired you for what to brainstorm or talk about today. If you want to take your time over lunch to try and think about what you might want to help either run a session with or co-run a session with to discuss a topic. You don't have to be an expert in the topic. You can just be passionate about it and want to bring people together to figure it out. There are some ideas up there already. Take a quick look before you take off. But we'll explain how the process works when you get back. Just come back with one or two ideas you want to talk about, and we'll help you work out the rest. So where are the food pods exactly?
10th and Alder.
10th
So
and
food cart pods are 10th and Alder. I mean, there's a bunch of different ones around here. The closest ones are 10th and Alder. If you want to go somewhere else, that's totally fine. The food cart pod, it's 2 full city blocks of streets covered in different options. So there's something for everybody. Plenty of different kinds of food. All excellent. That's a great idea. So anybody who is a Portland native who wants to lead a group, please stand up right now. Great. Native to this group. Resident. People who are at least familiar with geography. Okay. But yes, before we... Oh yeah, you can leave stuff here. Somebody will be here the whole time. And that might be me. But that's fine. Yeah, so first group photo. Let's go ahead and line up like in front of the green, nice leafy stuff, because that's in the shade.
Tall people in the back, you know how this works.
Forrest.
Hi.
My registration is here. What do I do to get that activated? So.
Oh, great, thanks, yeah. We'll check you in, but make yourself a name tag after the photo, yeah.
Okay, cool.
Cool, thanks.